We're beginning this morning in Turkey and Syria, where residents are waking up to more scenes of carnage and devastation following those two powerful earthquakes.
The first one is said to be Turkey's biggest in nearly a century. That quake hit the country's southeast early Monday. Another struck nearby just hours later. The death toll in both countries now stands at more than 5,000, but the World Health Organization says it could rise to more than 20,000. Overnight, harrowing stories emerged of people trapped under the rubble in freezing temperatures, shouting for help as first responders struggle to get through. This morning, search and rescue teams are battling the cold weather to find more survivors, while many countries around the world are sending their own crews to help out with the efforts. In just a few moments, we're going to hear from Dr. Bashir Tajaldeen. He is the country director for Turkey at the Syrian American Medical Society. But first, let's go to NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald. So, Megan, we are seeing more of these just horrifying pictures coming out of the region. Are emergency crews hopeful they can reach more survivors today? What's the latest in Turkey?
Well, Joe, it's good to be with you. Look, this is absolutely a race against time, and we are talking about more than 24 hours that thousands of people have been trapped beneath the rubble. And as you mentioned, we're talking about the depths of winter here. Cold temperatures, snow and rain in certain areas. And President Erdogan had said yesterday that that has an impact on first responders. But then, of course, you've got to imagine the people that are trapped beneath the rubble and the impact that that has on them. As you mentioned, I think what's most excruciating here, possibly the most excruciating, is the fact that first responders could hear the cries and the screams for help of the people that are trapped, that are desperate to be saved as they work around the clock through these frigid temperatures to try and save them, Joe.
You know, Megan, if you go just across the border to Syria, it is in many ways a drastically different situation. I mean, this earthquake is more heartache for a country that has been hit by years of civil war. So what's the situation like there with so many sanctions and travel restrictions? Can international rescue teams even get there quickly?
Look, Joe, you know, it's such a great question, and it absolutely is impacting the situation there. I mean, we see the aid that's in Turkey. We know that there's not as much aid in Syria right now. But look, we know that the world is wanting to help and assist Syria, and that help is on the way. President Biden, for example, just yesterday saying that U.S.-supported humanitarian partners will be going to Syria to try and help out. We know that the United Kingdom is working and in touch with the United Nations about sending help to Syria. We're hearing from the Syrian government seemingly playing politics. The head of the Syrian Arab Red Crescent saying that Western sanctions are impacting the ability for aid to get through. But the bottom line here is that there is a global response. We are seeing it in action. The world wants to help both the victims of in Turkey along with those in Syria as well, Joe.
And speaking of that international response, I mean, we know President Biden spoke with Turkey's president yesterday. What all is the United States offering right now?
Yeah, so President Biden further reaffirming his support for Turkey, this dedication to trying to help the country in any way possible. We know that rescue crews are already on the way to Turkey to be there on the ground to try and help with this search and rescue effort. We know, like we just talked about, you know, we are seeing this global response where countries like India, for example, sending medical aid. War-torn Ukraine is also offering help. This is a global response to what is most certainly a humanitarian crisis, Joe.
And that says something if Ukraine is offering its help, considering everything that country is going through right now. Megan, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And for more, we're joined by Dr. Bashir Tajaldeen. He's with the Syrian American Medical Society based in southern Turkey. Doctor, thank you so much for being here. So how are you doing today? And can you take us through what the past 24 hours have been like?
Good morning. Thank you for having me today in this interview. First of all, I would like to hope the mercy for the people passed away in both Turkey and Syria, and of the rapid healing for the injured people. Actually, it was a horrible and still horrible situation in both in Turkey and Syria. Still, we are facing a lot of aftershocks. Some of them are mild, some of them are moderate. So still we have some buildings are falling down in both sides. A lot of dead people. You heard the number. There are thousands, and tens of thousands are still either injured or under the rubble. The rescue and medical teams are doing their best to save as much lives as they can. Personally, I'm lucky to be in Turkey, where there is a stable government that is responding to such a crisis. But my deepest feeling and with my colleagues in Syria. Personally, I'm following the situation in Syria, mainly in northern Syria, on hourly basis. Me and my colleagues in the team, either here the team in Turkey or the medical teams inside Syria. It's a very terrible situation. We have many of the medical staff who are responding to the injured people in Syria while they are losing their families, their children here in Turkey under rebels, or even in Syria. Our hospitals are full of patients and injuries and dead people.
And Doctor, you talked about areas of Syria, right? They're already dealing with this ongoing humanitarian crisis. And in massive disasters like this, things can feel very moment to moment. I mean, you're joining us from your car. What are some of the biggest challenges you and your organization are facing right now? And how can people who are watching this help?
Yes. Actually, in Syria, we are facing a crisis since more than one decade, where the health facilities and the majority of the infrastructure have been targeted by airstrikes. So the infrastructure already are damaged. And now with this earthquake, we have lost more facilities. For example, yesterday we evacuated 2 maternity hospitals because of the damage in the infrastructure. Currently, the very urgent need we have in Syria is the medical supplies and consumables to treat the mass casualties. We need the support to the medical staff. We are trying to provide as much as we can psychosocial support to the staff are dealing with the injuries. Actually, we also need fuel to operate the hospitals and the facilities, as because of the earthquake, the electricity is cut down, so we need to keep the hospitals operated. And also, already we are under we have substandard number of inpatient beds for the people in northwest Syria because of the prolonged crisis. So now, more than any time ever, we need to increase the capacity of the hospitals to be able to deal with those patients. And also, on the other hand, we need to deal with the other needs rather than the health, like the shelter, the food items, the NFI. So all those sectors have been affected by the earthquake.
Yeah.
So currently and very urgently, we need medical supplies and increase the capacity of the hospitals. We need heating materials to the population. We need shelters, and we need food.
Clearly, the need is so high, doctor, medical, fuel, food, all of it. We're keeping you all in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
President Biden is gearing up for tonight's State of the Union address. It is the first time the president will face a divided Congress, literally face them, since Republicans took control of the House last month. We've got both the executive and legislative branches covered this morning with NBC News White House correspondent Carol Lee and congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin. Carol, let's start with you. President Biden expected to tout some of his biggest accomplishments from over the last year, but a new Washington Post poll found 62% of Americans believe he has not not done much while in office. So, I mean, why is there this disconnect with voters, and what does he plan to highlight tonight, hoping to try and break through that?
Well, it's a great question because this is a huge challenge for the president, Joe. And one of the things that we're going to see him try to do tonight, according to White House officials, is to go through the highlights reel of his presidency so far. So he's going to talk about all of the things that he has signed into law, with an emphasis on some of those laws that got bipartisan support. So, for instance, the infrastructure law and a CHIPS Act that's designed to manufacture semiconductors here in the United States. And so what the president's going to do is try to make this case that he's been doing a lot of things because, as you noted, Americans aren't feeling this in terms of the economic benefits, and they don't really know what he's done. And so this is an opportunity, the largest audience the president's going to get all year, and he will lay out what he's done so far. At the same time, he's going to also call for some new policies. Among those include expanding this insulin cap that Democrats passed that benefits Medicaid recipients. They want that to expand more broadly, voting rights, other issues that they would like to address. However, those are things that Democrats couldn't do on their own when they had control of both houses of Congress. So now all of that is just a little bit harder. So the president will try to make headway on things that he's already done in terms of Americans understanding them and feeling the benefits from them, and at the same time call for some new policies.
So, Julie, I mean, we know foreign policy is going to be featured tonight. Ukraine was a major topic in last year's address. How much do you think we're going to hear about Ukraine tonight as we prepare to mark 1 year since the start of the war? And also, is the president going to address the growing issue over this suspected Chinese spy balloon?
Yeah, Joe. Well, look, to Carol's point, the issue of China and Ukraine are perhaps the two issues that the president could get done in Congress in these next 2 years with the divided government, because support for Ukraine was really strong, of course, during the last State of the Union, just days after Russia invaded Ukraine. And the First Lady today also bringing the Ukrainian ambassador to the U.S. as one of her guests tonight. So this really sets the stage for what President Biden is going to emphasize. And after the U.S., including Congress, passing over $100 billion since the start of the war to Ukraine, the many critics think and hope and expect that the president will make this a focus and revive support for the war-torn country as we hit that 1 year mark, especially as support dwindles among Republicans in Congress, and of course China in light of this Chinese balloon after the weekend. The president tweaking some remarks ahead of tonight. This is one of the areas of bipartisan cooperation as well. We saw a China committee launched in the House, and lawmakers are expected to get briefed on this situation in the coming days.
And Julie, another major issue looming over the Biden administration is the debt ceiling and the president's relationship with the House Speaker, McCarthy. The president's going to be standing before this newly empowered GOP-controlled House. I mean, quickly here, how does that dynamic influence the president's speech tonight?
Yes, standing before the new Republican majority with the Speaker, McCarthy, sitting over his shoulder. And McCarthy gave a 10-minute speech last night, a rare scripted speech on the debt ceiling. This comes just days after he met with the president in the Oval Office, really urging spending negotiations, spending cuts for debt ceiling raise. And it is all his hope and Republicans' hope that the president will take his time today to say that that is possible. But as we've learned in the lead up to this from our White House colleagues, including Carol, the president is going to, of course, stick to their position of no negotiations over the debt ceiling. And this is something Republicans are hoping that he will bring bipartisan cooperation on.
All right, Julie Sirkin and Carol Lee with the preview of the State of the Union. Thank you both.
And with more on the State of the Union, we're joined now by David Litt, former speechwriter for President Obama and New York Times bestselling author. David, good morning. Thank you for being with us. So we've been here before, but remind us, what is the significance of a State of the Union address?
Well, thank you for having me this morning. And the State of the Union address is a very strange speech because on one hand, it is one of the, if not the premier presidential speech of the year. On the other hand, it's a real challenge because often it ends up becoming longer than anyone would like, and it can become kind of a laundry list. That's, every year you'll hear that phrase, laundry list, of policies And it's hard to find a backbone to that speech. But I do think it's also a big opportunity for a president and a White House, because this is a very rare moment, even in this internet era where we can all watch clips of our politicians talking. This is a moment when tens of millions of Americans are going to tune in, hear directly from the president, and hear him lay out his agenda for the coming year. That doesn't happen very often. And so this is still a big night for the president and for the White House.
And David, to your point, right, it doesn't happen often. This is just President Biden's second address. How have past presidents approached their second State of the Union address compared to their first?
Well, I think the biggest difference this State of the Union is that this is the first time when President Biden is not going to have a Democrat behind him in the chair occupied by the Speaker of the House. You're going to have Kevin McCarthy. And I think one of the most interesting things about this speech is not actually what President Biden is going to do. I suspect he's going to continue to do what presidents always do, laying out his agenda, making clear his priorities. We're going to have to see what the audience does. We saw the last time, most Americans were watching the floor of Congress was when Republicans spent days trying to figure out who they were going to elect Speaker of the House. It was, looked like it was a bunch of adults behaving like children over there. And the question now is the Republican caucus going to be able to hold itself together? Are they going to be able to sit still for 60 minutes and behave like, not like Democrats? They're not necessarily going to applaud the president, but are they going to be able to behave respectfully like public officials? Or are we going to see yet another sign that the Republican caucus is just not able to handle this new responsibility that it won in the last election?
And David, I wonder for you as a former speechwriter, how challenging can it be to strike that balance? You talked about the laundry list that the State of the Union can become. So how do presidents strike the balance between fact and fiction, talking about accolades while also issues that many Americans are dealing with?
I think when you look at the State of the Union, and this was always kind of a discussion in the speechwriting office when I was there, it is a real struggle because this is one of those speeches where you do have a lot of priorities to talk about. You can't say, okay, well, we'll just focus on one thing. There's lots of important things facing the country, and the president has to talk about those things. I think what speechwriters are looking for is a through line or a backbone to the speech, some major point. And I think here, my suspicion is what you'll see is that President Biden will frame this speech as sort of a halfway point in his term. So he's going to talk about what he accomplished during the first 2 years and then what that means going forward. And I think this is going to be the beginning of, the last 2 years were very legislatively successful with Democrats controlling Congress. The next 2 years, I think President Biden is going to be implementing and also trying to explain and sell those accomplishments.
All right, David Litt, thank you so much for that. And you can watch President Biden's State of the Union address tonight right here on NBC News Now. Our coverage starts at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Now to the latest developments involving the suspected Chinese surveillance balloon, which was shot down off the Carolina coast. U.S. officials are revealing new details about the balloon and how they were able to track it as it moved across the country. NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs correspondent Andrea Mitchell has the latest details.
The head of U.S. Northern Command says the 10-square-mile debris field from the Chinese surveillance balloon has been narrowed to less than a square mile. The Coast Guard setting up a security zone around the crash site, with the military saying the balloon was 200 feet tall, with a payload weighing more than 2,000 pounds. The president taking a hard line against China, which today escalated its attacks, saying it reserved the right to retaliate against the U.S.
We've made it clear to China what we're going to do. They understand our position. We're not going to back off. We did the right thing.
The goal now, analyze the wreckage to determine what information China was able to learn and whether it was using new technology.
We were also able to ensure the protection of any sensitive information that the balloon would not be able to collect against us because we knew exactly where it was going before it got there.
Two senior administration officials tell NBC News U-2 spy planes were circling the balloon as it crossed the country, taking pictures and extracting data about the Chinese capability.
There's immense intelligence value in watching an asset like this actually behave. What are its maneuverability, its collection, its emission characteristics?
But the White House is facing questions on Capitol Hill.
Members of Congress on both sides of the aisle have some serious questions about how long they knew about this, why they didn't shoot it down sooner, what information, if any, was able to be collected.
China still denying it was a spy mission.
This is a major unforced error and a blunder by China. It was a massive setback for their intelligence collection program. And I think globally around the world, we can be talking about China's invasion of sovereignty.
Our thanks to Andrea Mitchell for that report.
And to put this incident in perspective, the last time the U.S. shot down another country's aircraft in our airspace was during World War II in Pearl Harbor. Now for a check on your Morning News Now weather forecast.
Angie Lassman is with us. Good morning, Angie.
Good morning, guys. We're tracking our next front that's going to bring some potentially problematic and even dangerous weather to folks in the south. We'll start with that. Here's what's going on. You can see right now satellite and radar doesn't look like much. We have a little bit of rain working through Oklahoma City into St. Louis and stretching into parts of Texas. That's basically going to be the area that we see mostly impacted through the late parts of your day today. There's the system that we're tracking to the east. It looks like the timing of this is going to be later into the day and into the overnight hours and then into tomorrow. So this is kind of a two-day event where we'll watch for the potential, again, for some of these storms to strengthen and leave us with severe potential. Here's what it looks like as we get into tomorrow. We'll see it up into the Tennessee Valley, stretching down into the Gulf Coast. And then again, we'll continue to see that track to the east, and we'll make some improvements as far as our forecast for folks in the Gulf Coast and places like Texas. But the next 2 days, you got to be on guard. Here's the area that we're watching today. The impacts are limited today, not all that impressive, but still they do include places like Houston, Corpus Christi. We could see a tornado or two possible again later into the evening hours, into the overnight. We know those nocturnal tornadoes are always the most dangerous, so we won't rule out that potential. And wind gusts could be up to 60 miles per hour. Notice that we add the yellow in. That means that the potential is a little higher for us to see some of this severe weather, and there will be 6 million people included in that. So we're more likely to see these damaging wind gusts, the hail, and several tornadoes will be possible. That does include places like Lake Charles, New Orleans, and Jackson. So just be aware of that. Rainfall could be heavy at times, and localized flooding is not out of the question. Up to 4 inches of rain in some spots. Again, that does include a flash flood potential for places like Dallas and up into Fort Smith. So just be aware of that into tomorrow. And if you live in the east, boy, is it warm. Temperatures are well above normal. Some spots like Nashville running 17 degrees above where it should be for this time of year. Cleveland at 50 degrees today, 57 for Cincinnati. Guys, it feels like spring out there. And I have a feeling that people maybe in the Northeast as we get through the next couple of days might be wearing shorts outside. I know I'm going to see it.
Yep, I think you're right. In Minnesota, we wear shorts usually around 30 degrees.
Michigan, too?
Cannot relate.
Yep. So, all right. We'll take pictures the first time you see it, all right?
Angie
Thank you,
Lassman,
Angie.
thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.